Most people believe attraction is created by giving more attention, replying instantly, always being available, and making sure they are never forgotten. They assume that the more present they become in someone else's life, the more valuable they will appear. But human psychology often responds in the opposite way. When something is constantly available without limits, the mind slowly stops appreciating it. Familiarity replaces curiosity. Expectation replaces gratitude. What once felt special becomes ordinary. This is why understanding the value of your attention is one of the most important lessons in mastering human relationships. Your attention is one of the most valuable things you possess because it is a portion of your life that you can never recover. Every minute you spend focusing on someone is a minute you can never reclaim. Yet many people give their attention away as though it has no value. They immediately answer every message, constantly seek conversations, always make themselves available, and quietly hope that their endless presence will make others appreciate them more. Ironically, this often produces the opposite result. Human beings naturally value what is limited. This principle can be seen everywhere in life. Rare opportunities attract greater interest than unlimited ones. Exclusive experiences create more excitement than those available to everyone. The same psychology applies to your time and attention. When people know they can reach you at any moment without effort, they slowly begin treating your presence as something guaranteed rather than something valuable. This does not mean you should ignore people to manipulate them. Manipulation may create temporary curiosity, but it never creates genuine respect. The deeper lesson is about living a life that is so meaningful that your attention cannot be constantly available because it is invested in your own purpose. There is a profound difference between pretending to be busy and actually building a life that deserves your focus. Think about the people who naturally attract admiration. They are rarely chasing every conversation or seeking approval from everyone they meet. They have responsibilities, ambitions, passions, and personal goals that require their energy. Their attention is valuable because it is directed towards something meaningful. When they choose to spend time with someone, that choice feels intentional rather than habitual. Now compare that with someone whose entire day revolves around waiting for another person's message. Every notification controls their emotions. Every delayed reply creates anxiety. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to seek reassurance. Without realizing it, they communicate dependence rather than confidence. People may not consciously recognize this pattern, but they instinctively feel it. Excessive availability often signals that your world depends too heavily on theirs. Protecting your attention also protects your identity. When every moment is spent responding to other people's needs, you gradually lose connection with your own goals. Your schedule becomes controlled by interruptions instead of purpose. Days pass reacting instead of creating. Over time, this weakens not only your productivity, but also the quiet confidence that comes from directing your own life. There is another psychological effect at work. Space creates curiosity. When someone knows you have a fulfilling life beyond the relationship, they naturally become more interested in understanding that life. Your absence is not mysterious because you are playing games. It is meaningful because your time has direction. You are reading, learning, creating, improving, and pursuing ambitions that matter. This kind of distance inspires respect because it reflects discipline rather than emotional manipulation. Notice that emotionally secure people never measure their worth by how frequently someone contacts them. They enjoy conversations, but they do not depend on constant communication to feel important. They can spend time alone without feeling lonely because their life is already filled with purpose. This quiet independence becomes attractive because it demonstrates that happiness is being generated from within rather than borrowed from someone else's attention. Ironically, the less desperately you seek attention, the more genuine attention you often receive. People become curious about those who value their own time. They appreciate conversations more because they know your presence is intentional. Your words carry greater weight because they are not buried beneath endless attempts to stay noticed. So, stop believing that attraction comes from making yourself constantly available. Your value does not increase by giving away every moment of your day. It increases when your attention becomes a reflection of your priorities, your discipline, and your self-respect. Because the moment your attention becomes something you choose to give, rather than something you constantly seek to receive, people begin seeing your presence as truly valuable. Once you realize that your attention becomes more valuable when it is not constantly available, another truth begins to reveal itself. The people who are naturally attractive are rarely the ones chasing validation. They are the ones who have learned to create it from within. Human psychology is deeply influenced by emotional energy. People instinctively notice those who appear secure without constant reassurance. They are drawn to individuals who enjoy relationships, but are not emotionally dependent on them. This is the quiet power of emotional independence. Many people unknowingly make their happiness dependent on someone else's response. Their mood changes according to a text message. Their confidence rises when they receive attention and falls when they are ignored. They constantly wonder whether people like them, approve of them, or think highly of them. Without realizing it, they surrender control of their emotional state to circumstances they cannot control. This creates anxiety, and anxiety is difficult to hide. Even when no words are spoken, emotional dependence quietly reveals itself through behavior. Think about someone who constantly seeks reassurance. They always ask if everything is okay. They overthink delayed replies. They become uneasy when someone seems distant. They immediately assume they have done something wrong. Their entire emotional world revolves around how others respond to them. While this behavior often comes from a sincere desire to connect, it can unintentionally communicate insecurity rather than confidence. Now compare that with someone who enjoys meaningful relationships but never builds their identity around them. They appreciate conversations without demanding constant communication. They value affection without expecting endless validation. If someone becomes busy, they do not immediately panic or create negative stories in their mind. Their happiness continues because it was never entirely dependent on another person's attention. This emotional stability creates a powerful first impression because it reflects inner confidence rather than emotional need. Human beings naturally admire people who appear complete on their own. This does not mean becoming emotionally distant or pretending not to care. It means building a life so rich with purpose, discipline, learning, and personal growth that relationships become an important part of your life, not the entire foundation of it. When your identity is built on your values instead of someone else's approval, your confidence becomes remarkably steady. One of the greatest misconceptions about attraction is believing that it comes from making people notice you. In reality, lasting attraction often comes from becoming someone who no longer needs to be noticed. There is something psychologically compelling about a person who is fully engaged in building their own future. They are reading, learning, improving, creating, and pursuing meaningful goals. Their energy is directed toward growth instead of constantly seeking recognition. Others become curious because they sense depth rather than desperation. This is why emotionally independent people often remain calm in situations that overwhelm others. Rejection does not destroy their confidence, because they understand that not every connection is meant to last. Criticism does not define their self-worth because they have already accepted themselves. Silence does not make them anxious because they have learned to enjoy their own company. Their peace comes from within, not from external approval. Ironically, the less you depend on people to confirm your value, the more valuable you often appear. This is not because you are trying to create distance. It is because genuine confidence changes your behavior naturally. You stop chasing conversations that feel one-sided. You stop forcing relationships that lack mutual effort. You stop changing your personality just to be accepted. Instead, you allow people to know the real you while remaining completely comfortable if everyone does not choose to stay. There is tremendous freedom in reaching a point where your self-respect is stronger than your fear of rejection. You no longer interpret every disagreement as failure. You no longer compete for attention because your life already has direction. This inner security becomes visible in the way you walk, speak, listen, and interact with others. People trust calm confidence because it is rare in a world where so many seek constant validation. Remember, emotional independence is not about ignoring people to make them chase you. It is about refusing to abandon yourself while trying to keep someone else's attention. Continue showing kindness. Continue building meaningful relationships. But never let another person's opinion become the foundation of your identity. The strongest connections are formed between two emotionally complete individuals, not between two people desperately trying to complete each other. Because the moment your happiness stops depending on other people's attention, your confidence becomes effortless. And that quiet confidence is naturally attractive. Once you become emotionally independent, something remarkable begins to happen. You no longer feel the need to fill every silence with words. You stop believing that constant conversation is the only way to maintain connection. Instead, you discover one of the most overlooked principles of human psychology. Silence often communicates more than endless talking ever could. In a world where everyone is trying to be heard, the person who knows when to remain silent naturally stands apart. Many people fear silence because they mistake it for awkwardness. The moment a conversation slows down, they rush to speak. They reveal unnecessary details, explain themselves repeatedly, or search desperately for something to say. Deep inside, they worry that if they stop talking, people will lose interest in them. But this fear often produces the opposite result. When every thought is spoken immediately, your words begin to lose their value. What is constantly available rarely feels significant. Human beings naturally pay closer attention to things that are measured and intentional. Think about the people who leave a lasting impression on you. They are rarely the loudest individuals in the room. They do not dominate every discussion or compete to have the final word. Instead, they observe carefully, listen deeply, and speak only when they have something meaningful to contribute. Because they do not waste words, every sentence carries greater weight. Silence also gives you an advantage that constant talking can never provide. It allows you to observe. While most people are focused on expressing themselves, they unknowingly reveal their fears, ambitions, insecurities, and motivations. The more someone speaks, the more information they offer about who they truly are. Their tone, choice of words, emotional reactions, and repeated topics all become clues about their character. A quiet observer often understands people far better than someone who is always trying to impress them. This is why listening is one of the greatest forms of influence. When people feel genuinely heard, they naturally feel understood. Ironically, they often remember you as an excellent conversationalist, even if you spoke very little. Why? Because you gave them something rare, your complete attention. In a world filled with interruptions and distractions, true listening has become a form of quiet power. There is another psychological reason silence creates attraction. It leaves room for curiosity. When you reveal everything about yourself immediately, there is little left for others to discover. Mystery is not about hiding who you are or pretending to be unavailable. It is about allowing your character to unfold naturally over time. People appreciate what they discover through experience far more than what is endlessly explained to them. This principle also applies during moments of conflict. Many people react instantly when criticized or misunderstood. They rush to defend themselves, hoping to change the other person's opinion. But emotional reactions often give unnecessary power to the situation. Sometimes silence demonstrates greater confidence than the most carefully prepared argument. It communicates that your self-worth does not depend on winning every disagreement or correcting every misunderstanding. Of course, silence should never become emotional withdrawal or passive aggression. The goal is not to ignore people as a way of controlling them. Healthy silence is thoughtful, not manipulative. It creates space for reflection instead of conflict. It allows emotions to settle before decisions are made. It transforms impulsive reactions into intentional responses. As you develop this habit, your communication begins to change. You stop speaking simply to avoid uncomfortable moments. You ask better questions because you are genuinely interested in understanding others. You pause before responding because you value wisdom more than speed. Your words become fewer, but they become stronger. People start paying closer attention because they know you do not speak carelessly. Over time, this quiet discipline becomes part of your presence. Others begin to sense that your confidence is not built on constant attention. You no longer feel pressure to entertain every room or prove your intelligence in every conversation. You are comfortable allowing silence to exist because you understand that confidence is not measured by how much you say, but by how little you need to say. In the end, attraction is not created by speaking the most. It is created by making every word reflect clarity, purpose, and self-control. When your silence comes from confidence instead of insecurity, people naturally become more curious about you, more attentive to your words, and more respectful of your presence. Because the person who masters silence never needs to chase attention. Their quiet presence naturally draws it. By now, you understand that protecting your attention, becoming emotionally independent, and mastering silence naturally change the way people perceive you. But there is another lesson that separates emotionally strong individuals from those who constantly chase approval. It is learning when to stop pursuing people. Many relationships become exhausting, not because there is no connection, but because one person is doing all the work while the other simply receives it. Human psychology reveals an uncomfortable truth. When effort is always one-sided, attraction slowly disappears and respect begins to fade. Many people believe that if they just try a little harder, send one more message, make one more sacrifice, or explain themselves one more time, the other person will finally appreciate them. They convince themselves that persistence is proof of love, friendship, or loyalty. But there is a fine line between genuine effort and desperate pursuit. When someone repeatedly has to chase another person's attention, they unknowingly communicate that they value the relationship far more than they value themselves. Think about how often this happens. Someone always starts the conversation. They always make the plans. They are always the first to apologize, even when they have done nothing wrong. They continue giving time, energy, and emotional investment while receiving very little in return. At first, they tell themselves they are simply being caring. But over time, care without reciprocity becomes emotional exhaustion. Human relationships are healthiest when effort flows in both directions. Mutual respect is built when both people choose to invest. If only one person is carrying the relationship, the connection slowly becomes unbalanced. The person doing all the work begins feeling invisible, while the other person often starts taking that effort for granted. This is not always because they are cruel. It is because human beings naturally adapt to what becomes constantly available. One of the greatest mistakes people make is confusing pursuit with value. They believe that constantly proving themselves will increase another person's appreciation. Ironically, excessive pursuit often creates the opposite effect. The more desperately you seek someone's attention, the less space you leave for them to invest in you. Relationships require room for both people to choose each other. If one person is always moving forward, the other never has to. This is why giving people space is so important. Space is not punishment. It is not emotional manipulation. It is an opportunity for truth to reveal itself. When you stop forcing every conversation and stop carrying every interaction, you begin seeing who genuinely values your presence. Those who care will naturally reach out. They will make an effort because relationships matter to them too. Those who disappear reveal something equally valuable. They were benefiting from your pursuit more than they were contributing to the connection. This realization can be painful because it forces you to confront reality instead of hope. Hope often whispers that people will eventually change if you love them enough. Reality asks a different question. What are their actions telling you today? Actions reveal priorities far more clearly than promises. If someone consistently chooses not to invest, believe the pattern instead of inventing excuses. Emotionally strong people understand that they cannot convince others to value them. They refuse to spend years chasing relationships that require constant persuasion. Instead, they direct their energy toward people who willingly show respect, appreciation, and consistency. This shift transforms not only their relationships, but also their self-respect. Every time you stop chasing someone who refuses to meet you halfway, you remind yourself that your value is not determined by another person's interest. There is also a deeper benefit. The time and emotional energy you once spent pursuing reluctant people become available for your own growth. You focus on your purpose, your health, your ambitions, and the relationships that naturally bring peace instead of confusion. Ironically, this is when your presence becomes more attractive. Not because you are trying to make anyone chase you, but because your life no longer revolves around chasing anyone else. Remember, ignoring people is never about playing games or creating artificial distance. It is about refusing to abandon your dignity in the pursuit of acceptance. You remain kind, you remain respectful, but you stop forcing connections that require you to constantly prove your worth. You let actions speak louder than words, and you allow effort to reveal genuine interest. Because the moment you stop chasing people who refuse to choose you, you create space for relationships where respect, effort, and attraction exist naturally. As you stop chasing attention and begin allowing people to reveal their true level of interest, another transformation naturally takes place. Your focus starts shifting away from people's opinions and towards something far more important, your purpose. This is where genuine attraction begins. Human psychology has always been drawn to individuals who are deeply committed to something meaningful. There is an undeniable presence about a person whose life is driven by purpose rather than by the constant need for approval. Many people unknowingly spend most of their lives managing other people's perceptions. Before making a decision, they wonder what everyone will think. Before expressing an opinion, they fear criticism. Before pursuing a dream, they wait for validation. Without realizing it, they allow strangers, acquaintances, and even temporary relationships to determine the direction of their lives. This creates hesitation, and hesitation slowly weakens confidence. Purpose changes everything. The moment you become deeply committed to a meaningful goal, your priorities begin to shift. You no longer wake up wondering who has noticed you. You wake up thinking about what you must build, improve, and accomplish. Your energy is invested in growth rather than approval. This quiet redirection changes not only your daily habits, but also the way people perceive you. Think about the individuals who naturally inspire admiration. They are often busy creating something larger than themselves. They are developing their skills, strengthening their character, building businesses, mastering a craft, improving their health, or pursuing a mission they genuinely believe in. Their attention is directed toward progress instead of popularity. Because of this, They appear grounded, focused, and emotionally secure. Human beings instinctively respect people who have direction. A person without purpose often becomes consumed by other people's opinions because they have nothing stronger guiding their decisions. Every compliment lifts them. Every criticism discourages them. Their identity changes according to the reactions around them. But someone with a clear purpose remains remarkably steady. Praise does not distract them. Criticism does not stop them. Their mission becomes stronger than temporary emotions. This is why purpose naturally creates attraction. It signals confidence without needing to announce it. When your life has direction, you stop trying to convince everyone of your worth. Your actions begin speaking on your behalf. Others notice your discipline because they see consistency. They notice your confidence because they see commitment. They notice your calmness because they understand that your emotional energy is invested in something meaningful rather than scattered across countless opinions. There is another psychological reason purpose is so powerful. It protects you from emotional dependency. When your days are filled with meaningful work, learning, creativity, and personal growth, you no longer have endless time to overanalyze relationships or seek constant reassurance. Your fulfillment begins coming from progress instead of approval. This creates emotional stability, and emotional stability is one of the most attractive qualities a person can possess. Notice how differently purposeful people respond to rejection. They may feel disappointed, but they do not abandon themselves. They continue moving forward because their identity was never built on one person's acceptance. Their mission remains unchanged. This resilience quietly communicates strength. It shows that while relationships are valuable, they are not the sole source of meaning in life. Purpose also makes your presence more intentional. Instead of saying yes to every invitation or constantly seeking attention, you become selective with your time. You understand that every hour invested in distractions is an hour taken away from your growth. This does not make you distant or uncaring. It simply means you recognize the value of your time. People naturally become more curious about those who clearly value their own lives. Ironically, the less you organize your life around being attractive, the more attractive you become. This is because genuine attraction is rarely created by trying to impress people. It is created by becoming someone who is fully engaged in becoming the best version of themselves. Confidence becomes effortless because it is built through discipline. Presence becomes powerful because it is supported by purpose. Respect becomes natural because it is rooted in character rather than performance. Never allow temporary opinions to become permanent obstacles. People will misunderstand you. Some will doubt your ambitions. Others may criticize the path you choose. Let them. Their opinions belong to them. Your responsibility is to remain faithful to your purpose. Every day you choose growth over validation, discipline over distraction, and vision over approval, you strengthen the foundation of your character. Because the most attractive people are never those who spend their lives trying to be noticed. They are the ones too focused on their purpose to need anyone's permission to become extraordinary. As you reach the final lesson, one truth rises above every strategy, every psychological principle, and every social dynamic you have learned. Attraction is not something you chase. It is something you become. Many people spend years searching for techniques to make others notice them. They study conversations, body language, texting habits, and countless methods designed to increase attention. But they overlook the one principle that quietly governs them all. Lasting attraction is never created by manipulation. It is created by self-respect. This is where many people misunderstand the idea of ignoring others. They believe the goal is to make someone anxious, jealous, or emotionally dependent. They hope that by creating distance, they can force another person to pursue them. But attraction built on emotional games is fragile. It depends on uncertainty instead of trust. It creates temporary curiosity, but it rarely creates lasting admiration. The moment the game ends, so does the attraction. The strongest people understand something different. They do not ignore others to gain attention. They simply refuse to ignore themselves. Their own growth, values, discipline, and peace become their highest priorities. As a result, they naturally become less available for meaningless drama, endless validation, and one-sided relationships. This is not because they care less about people. It is because they care more about living a life that reflects who they truly are. Self-respect changes everything. It changes the way you speak because you no longer feel the need to impress everyone. It changes the way you listen because you are not desperately waiting for your turn to be noticed. It changes the way you walk away from unhealthy situations because you understand that protecting your peace is not selfish. It is necessary. Every decision begins reflecting confidence instead of fear. Human psychology responds powerfully to this kind of person. People naturally admire those who appear comfortable with themselves. They notice individuals who remain authentic instead of constantly changing to fit expectations. They trust those who maintain their values even when compromise would bring temporary approval. This quiet consistency creates attraction because it reflects emotional maturity. Think about the people you genuinely respect. Chances are they never seem desperate for attention. They were kind without being weak, confident without becoming arrogant, friendly without sacrificing their dignity. They enjoyed relationships, but their happiness did not depend entirely on them. Their lives had direction beyond social approval. This is exactly why their presence felt valuable. They were not trying to appear attractive. They were simply living according to principles that naturally inspired admiration. Another remarkable effect of self-respect is that it removes the fear of rejection. Most people struggle in relationships because they are terrified of losing someone. That fear causes them to overthink every conversation, tolerate unacceptable behavior, and compromise their values just to keep another person close. But when your identity is rooted in self-respect, rejection loses much of its power. You understand that not every connection is meant to last. Some people will appreciate you, others will not. Neither outcome changes your value. This freedom transforms the energy you bring into every relationship. You stop trying to convince people to like you. You stop performing for acceptance. You stop exhausting yourself trying to become everything for everyone. Instead, you allow your character to speak for itself. Those who genuinely appreciate your authenticity remain. Those who only valued your constant pursuit quietly drift away. Either outcome brings peace because your self-worth was never dependent on their decision. It is also important to remember that kindness and self-respect are not opposites. You can be compassionate without becoming emotionally dependent. You can be generous without allowing yourself to be taken for granted. You can care deeply about people while still protecting your boundaries. True confidence never requires cruelty. It simply refuses to abandon dignity in exchange for approval. As you continue through life, people will come and go. Some will misunderstand your silence. Others may mistake your independence for distance. Let them. Your responsibility is not to manage every opinion. Your responsibility is to remain faithful to the person you are becoming. Continue building your purpose. Continue strengthening your character. Continue choosing peace over validation and growth over approval. In time, you will discover that the people who truly belong in your life are not attracted by games or tactics. They are attracted by the quiet confidence of someone who genuinely respects themselves, because in the end, the most attractive person in any room is never the one chasing attention. It is the one whose self-respect shines so clearly that attention naturally follows.